Good morning. If you're just joining us, you're watching Morning Express. Today we'll be taking a look at the week in review, just some of the biggest headlines and rather stories that have unfolded throughout the week from Monday. And with me is Kevin Osido, who's the Director of County Governance Watch. But just to get you into the discussion, we would like you to contribute by answering this question. Do you think the lockdown of Eastleigh and Old Town, that's in Mombasa, will help curb the spread of coronavirus? Do you think this is going to work? Tell us what you think. It has been covered adversely in the papers, and we're told these areas are now ghost towns because activity cannot go on as usual. But it is said activity that was contributing to the spread of coronavirus. I'm at Trix Ingado, Michael's at Michael G. Gitonga. The official hashtag is KTN Morning Express. Let me know what you think, and I will be sampling your views as we go along with the discussion and making you a part of it. And I'll pose the same question to Kevin Osido. Do you think the lockdown is going to aid in curbing the spread of coronavirus, particularly in Eastleigh and Old Town?
Let me say, given that this is a government directive, my answer would be yes, because government has adequate intelligence to be able to make certain decisions.
Right.
Government has a privilege of knowing why certain actions are being taken. And government has reasons why it is Eastleigh and downtown in Mombasa that these kind of actions are being meted on. But remember that these are sections of counties that are already experiencing partial lockdown. Nairobi we've been at this for almost, I think, 38 days now,
yes,
if I'm not wrong. Mombasa and many parts of the coastal area have also been experiencing this kind of issue. But remember that government is taking these actions by virtue of where the highest number of infections are being experienced. So if you come to Nairobi, which is fast followed by Mombasa, probably it is Eastleigh and other surrounding areas that are contributing these higher numbers. And when you go to Mombasa, then it is Old Town that is then contributing this amount of cases.
Yes.
In my way of looking at it, really, it should not be seen as a war between government and its people.
Okay.
Kenyans, let's be responsible. Government has given us, in my view, very simple safety measures and directives to follow. Wash your hands with soap for at least 20 seconds, running water. And that therefore means tricks that governments also need to ensure that citizens of Kenya have water
access
to be able to wash their hands. It's disturbing that there are very many places in our country that still are experiencing inadequate or rather shortage supply of water. It means when government says that put on your mask when you're in public, please provide the masks. We have seen a lot of resources that have been put in place to be able to ensure that these personal protective equipment or gears are provided. Work towards ensuring that Kenyans have masks. And then when you put these kind of measures like lockdowns in Eastleigh and in Old Town and several other places that may experience similar kind of measures, then people also can be able to empathize and work together with the government, believe government when it takes action, and build trust that what government is doing is the right thing to do. Otherwise, as it is right now.
Trust, Kevin, is it a question of communication? How come we're having situations whereby people are running away, families test positive, then they run away? That means they have literally zero trust in the government or the health facilities in the area to actually hunker down and depend on them for a cure, or rather to get better. They would rather gather their things and just disappear.
People are running away because they're looking for safety and security. And when you say safety, security, I'm looking at my table and I'm saying I'll be here for the next 14, 21 days. I do not have food on my table. How will I be able to safeguard my children? People are running away because KPLC decides when you have power, you don't have it. So you'd rather go to a place where you can charge your phone and communicate to people, where you can surf online and get information about what's happening. People are running away for fear of police meting serious violence, if I could use that word, on people who are not following directives. And so people are running away because they're looking for safety and security, which therefore means, like you rightfully said, Tricks, that government needs to also enhance its communication mechanism. It's not enough for the CS to come every day, or rather the ministry to be appearing on TV every day to give us numbers, data, and statistics. But please, let's move this to the people the voices of communities.
Right.
Where we are now seeing that the infections are much more dire and serious. Let's move out to working with community health volunteers in our wards. Let's move out there and look at effective measures of working with young people who command serious, massive numbers of people who listen to them at their grassroots. Let's move out there and look at how we engage with women who lead women networks and women groups at the village or the community level, and move away from platforms or tools of communication that may not be as friendly to the people. When Eastleigh and Old Town was locked down, I asked myself, are these not the areas that really drive the economy of this great republic? The rice that I eat, for example, many times tricks comes from Garissa, and I have to send someone or I have to go to Eastleigh to pick it. The green grams and the mboshos that I eat come from Garissa, and we have to pick them from Eastleigh. And many families in Kenya have ways in which they secure their meals.
Yes.
When you talk about the kind of some of the things that we use in our households, pieces of soap, clothes that we wear, at least for people who live in Nairobi, a month may not come to an end before you visit Eastleigh.
Yes.
It means that therefore this is an area that is quite important to the economy of the country. It's really a commercial hub, and the same from the photo that you see is really evident of what happens in Old Town Mombasa. So this therefore means that government needs to enhance its response mechanism and safety measures in terms of dealing with areas that are very important to the economy, and that these are areas that also pull very big crowds. And that therefore means that we need to look at how we engage and build trust and confidence in the citizens so that our communication and information is much more believable, and that people are also able to work very effectively with us to ensure that as we fight coronavirus, we are also responding to the needs of Kenyans, things which they expect to have on a daily basis, like food, and shelter.
Yes, and it's quite important to know that this is not something that's unique to Kenya. It started off abroad, trickled into Kenya as people are traveling in and out of the country. Now we can borrow from other countries and figure out how to handle this. At the same time, when there are having these flashpoints in certain areas based on the infrastructure of the area, the commercial activity, and perhaps also the population density of these areas, shouldn't this then inform the measures that are being put in place in other areas? Because we are having other small pockets in Kawangware and what have you that actually point to a fact of that this might be a similar scenario in these other areas. So should the county governments be acting in a way that that would preempt any further spread in those areas, being informed by what's happening perhaps in Mombasa Old Town area and of course Eastleigh?
I agree with you. Lessons learned from practice. So from the last number of days that we have had partial lockdown in various parts of the country, what have we seen in terms of response to COVID-19? Are we making it? Are we breaking it? Are we messing it up and around? And I think that those are therefore supposed to bring up our initial conversation around interagency government collaboration and cooperation in terms of how DCI is working with together with those who are doing contact tracing, in terms of how Ministry of Health and its agencies, including KIMRI and others, are ensuring that the cases are not just being reported, but that there is also information that you're given as a survivor in terms of how you're going to be taken back to society. Because this is somebody who has family members, you have relatives, you have things that you are doing. How are we moving on from the recovery process and then back to society?
Right.
We need to move forward into looking at, yes, of course, how does then this kind of partial lockdowns inform other lockdowns or partial lockdowns in other parts of the countries, not forgetting, notwithstanding the fact that about only 18 counties have been, cases have been seen to be progressive or suspected or tested in about 18 counties. What then happens to the remaining number of counties? Does it mean that life goes on as is normal? Does it mean that does it therefore mean that those county governments need to look at their regional economic blocks and bring together their might in terms of responding to the counties that are already suffering? Does it mean that we should lessen our efforts to say, for example, that, okay, Nakuru is safe, so we don't have to worry about a county, for example, like Nakuru, where no cases have been reported? I think that this, therefore, presents an opportunity for us to think through Kenya as one, and that whatever is affecting one part of the country needs to be something that then sends shivers to another part of the country, and then we see how we can be able to bring together our unity to be able to deal with these issues. I'm sure that government, in its wisdom, has what it takes to respond to COVID-19, but the question is, can we be able to translate those responses to things that Kenyans can be able to touch out there in the communities? I think that is the gap which is really affecting how government is responding, and is therefore is something that is sending very many questions to the minds of Kenyans. For example, when you hear that 40 billion has been used in 40 days, is a huge sum of money. But then you ask, so what have you done with $1 billion per day? And I'm still buying my own masks at 200 or 250 or 500 or 50 or 30. I'm still seated there waiting in a queue for my neighbor who is helping people to see masks to share some of those masks with me. I think government needs to be very proactive when it comes to what it is doing to be able to respond, the actions that it is taking to be able to effect some of these measures like partial lockdowns, and ultimately how all these things translate to what Kenyans are feeling and seeing government doing on their behalf.
Okay, now we have a lot of stories that have come out the whole week that are emerging or somewhat interconnected with the spread of COVID-19. And another element that has been quite affected is the education sector, whereby we've had the schools trying to make some sort of revenue, and we're having them, individuals offering classes online. But what has come out quite greatly during this period is the inequality in the country, because not everyone is going to fare well as far as their education is concerned, particularly the primary and secondary school goers. Now, the Education Ministry has said that they're going to shorten the upcoming holidays by 2 weeks, and therefore, and also warned nobody who does not belong to the TSC gives any educational materials online, which is quite something, which is a danger, because everyone is scrambling for education for their kids to ensure that they actually keep up. And they're also promising that when things resume, they'll go back to where it stopped, and of course this would shift the education calendar to some way. Another raft of another proposal is that KCPE and KCC examination could be postponed if the viral cases go on the rise, and the ministry could split candidates into two groups, one going to school in the morning, the other in the afternoon, just to make sure that they are going to school and maintaining the social distancing and things like that, and making sure that they are safe. And August holidays will be shortened, as I said, and decisions on the examination to be made and communicated to Kenyans in 2 weeks. What do you think of this?
You remember in our earlier conversation, we mentioned two sectors that have really suffered in our country. That's health and education. And here we are again. Again, the issue is multi-stakeholder engagement, collaboration, communication, and feedback.
Right.
Because education, we are talking about not just the students and the pupils, but we are also talking about parents who are having, those of us who have these children in our families. We are talking about the teachers. We are talking about associations that speak on behalf of teachers at both primary and secondary level. We are talking about tertiary education, universities and institutions of higher learning. Beyond that, we are talking about the infrastructure to be able to ensure that government measures actually take place. So when you talk about online learning, then what happens to people who do not have electricity? Right. Despite the fact that in the first term of President Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto's government, they spoke about last mile electricity, where even we were showed houses with grass-thatched houses having connections of electricity. We were told about laptops, and that each kid in every primary school in Kenya will own a laptop. And you see, God was already preparing us for a time such as this. Unfortunately, in my view, I think we were not very keen to listen to what angels were saying.
Yeah, imagine if that had been actualized, how
it would be
thankful
very
Kenyans
easy.
would have been.
Yeah, it would be very, very easy.
Yeah.
We'd be talking about examination, KCPE, KCPE, KCSE, KCPE taking place online.
Yeah.
Professor Magoha would not be struggling with teachers, the Senate summoning him and him going to ask them, are they alive, are they sick, what is happening? We would be very, very comfortable, and parents by now would have really adapted into the new technology. Teachers would have been trained, because I know that that's one of the areas that TSC and other unions of teachers have been asking government, show us the people that you have trained on technology and how this is responding to the needs of pupils and schools. And so I think that government, the intent is very good. The policies are favorable, but the practice is wanting. It's terrible. It's not responsive. We can't touch it, and that is what people are asking for. Show me the online. My daughter struggles with WhatsApp, and she's asking, so how mwalimu amesema to download? No printer. You have to go to a cyber in Eastleigh, where there is a lockdown, for example. So the cyberman is not there. You have to be thinking about Old Town Mombasa. The shops are closed, and you are thinking about buying printing papers. Okay, you are talking education online, but I'm really worried about rains and floods that have swept my entire family in Nyando.
Or the eviction that
and
has
the evictions that are taking place in parts of Nairobi and other parts of Kenya. And so government is not seen to be working together in unison. Probably there is a bit of, somebody may have left the cabinet WhatsApp group and missed some bit of conversation on how to be able to look at COVID-19, flooding, and education. But then what this means, in my view, Trix, is that the Minister of Education needs to be very categorical and clear to open up its spaces for education. As County Governance Watch, we did a survey in the first 2 weeks of when government asked us to stay at home, and you are asking parents, so are you prepared for the new changes? We even asked people, have you interacted with the KICD online education platforms that take place on KBC, radio and TV? And in about 218 surveys that we did, only 87 people had interacted with these kind of platforms. But these are parents who have children who are going to school. Then the question is, when you set the exams, how are we going to ensure that everybody is prepared and ready to sit for those exams? Yes, I have heard the ministry say and other stakeholders that we have only lost 3 weeks, which anyway contributes to the April holidays. But remember that exams are not just exams. This is something, at least, and unfortunately for the sake of Kenya, KCPE is what will determine the kind of school where you go to. Ultimately, it is what will determine who you become in life. Despite the fact that we are talking about curriculum-based, competency-based learning and all these CBCs, but that has not been effectively translated for us parents to be able to really understand what it means and translate it to what government is doing, and then ultimately contribute to both government and the entire stakeholder engagement.
In their defense, the CS, George Magoha, had actually said that there's no such thing as inequality because all children are equal, and that is why when they come back to school, when schools reopen, they'll just go back to where they stopped, and so nobody should be worried about there being a sort of historical injustice later on because some kids continued their educations and others didn't. What do you make of that?
It's better said than done, and that's what we are saying, that government says it as easily as it sounds, but kwa ground vitu kwa kweli ni different, very different, because inequality is seen in terms of how we live our lives. We have kids who, for example, sit on stones. We have a story which was done by this media house where one small room was being used by 4 different classrooms. I mean classes, class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, with teachers looking at different sides of the walls. I think we have to really be real to what is happening to our people. And that means that I believe that COVID-19 is giving us the opportunity to think outside the box and begin to create responsive measures and frameworks, and even relook at our policies, how they interact with the environment in terms of the context of what is happening within the country. Otherwise, there would be a problem in terms of transitioning into real life, which then is going to ultimately affect even the GDP of this country, because garbage in, indeed, you're going to expect garbage out.
Yeah, and speaking of GDP, we are told right now that Kenya has surpassed its GDP to loan ratio, whereby we're over 50%. Yet, we were told yesterday, I think this news broke, that Kenya has gotten a 79 billion IMF loan to shore up the economy. What did this, when you heard this, did this give you some sort of anxiety? Because even before COVID, we were struggling with loans.
In my view, it was not necessary, because we've already surpassed our debt burden. We are talking negative 6 trillion. At least the last I checked was 6.3 trillion. Against partial lockdowns, and people are asking for at least the small holder businessmen and women are asking for economic stimulus packages, which government is still struggling to be able to ensure that we have. We are talking about job losses and companies that are closing down, and people, young people who cannot be able to access employment. And then suddenly this money comes against infrastructure that has been one of the biggest beneficiaries of our loans, for example, SGR and several others, whose results up to now probably we cannot be able to touch and feel, and then suddenly 79 billion is dropped into it.
Is there a way that we could harness these monies in a way that will literally save us, even make it possible for us to repay it? Or are we just digging ourselves down? We have found ourselves in a hole, and we haven't stopped digging, we just keep digging. Are there ways we can, in a way, just make sure that this is our way out rather than into more problems?
One of the ways is to be able to have, in my view, macro level GDP contributors. And let me break it down and say that we have 47 counties. How can these counties enhance their own source revenue? Which then means that you have a bigger number of people accessing employment, ultimately throwing it back to the economy through taxes, whether it is licenses, whether it is fees, whether it is pay as you earn, and several others, including fees which you pay when you're accessing services like healthcare and education. How can county governments generate their own source revenues through industrial revolution, which therefore means that we are looking at least every county in Kenya, and from 2013, we used to have what was then called Transition Authority, and from County Governance Watch perspective, we have at least tried to scan the country and look at what is it in which county that can be able to be bolstered to create employment and then enhance circulation of money. You go to Kisii, for example, soapstone. You go to Nyamira, you have things happening. You go to Makueni, you have the mangoes. You go to Kitui, you have the textile that is taking place. What does Machakos have that it can be able to, for example, say, given 3 years, you have this particular thing in your area that can absorb more than 4,000 young people seeking employment. Kikomi in Kisumu fell down. Can government work together with both national and county, work together to ensure that we revive some of these industries and areas and avenues that will then be opportunities to generate resources? Because otherwise what it means, Trix, is that we are trying to milk this cow that we are not giving proper pasture. It is eating, and we are not giving it enough money, but we keep milking it until when the cow is fallen, then it means we are not going to be benefiting anything. I know that the president has said that the government is very concerned about what is happening, and that there are, of course, even parliamentarians have been asking for economic stimulus packages. The question is, can we be able to say it and do it? Because what we are doing is talking about it but not doing anything about it. So that when loans like these ones come, then these loans should be able to only respond to areas where there is at most need. For example, if we say there is COVID-19 and we have people in our societies that we used to pay money, and so that money, like the 2,000 and the 3,000, has now gone into emergency response, then let IMF and other Bretton Woods institutions give us these monies to respond to gaps which we are experiencing as a country, but not alone to either use it to pay a loan or a loan to be able to respond to things which then the government should be able to take care of, which are serious primary service delivery concerns.
Okay, and time will tell how this goes. Hopefully the graph is positive. Now that has been Kevin Osido, who's the Director of County Governance. Watch, thank you very much for your insight. Coming up next is a celebrity chat and hot topics, and this will be steered by Brian Eseli, who is locked and loaded right at the side over there. But for now, let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll have more for you here on Morning Express.
This is KTN News.